Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank everybody for attending the meeting this morning. I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. And if we can, maybe everybody go around and just say hello. I'll just call on people as they kind of show up on my screen, but introduce yourself. So Scott, you're up at the top there for me.
I'm Scott Killinger. I work for Baxter and Woodman. We're the engineers for Will County, so I'm here representing Will County.
Thank you. Tim? Are you on, Tim? All right, we'll come back to Tim in a minute. Dina.
I'm Dean Duhalik with the Conservation Foundation, and I am on the Lower DuPage River Watershed Coalition Executive Board, and I also provide some staffing services with the DRSCW.
Lisa?
I'm Lisa McNames. I'm the Regulatory Compliance Manager for the City of Naperville.
Doug?
Good morning. I'm Doug Kissel. I'm the wastewater superintendent for the Village of Plainfield, and I'm on the board for the Lower DuPage.
Joe?
Good morning. Joe Slubnik, City of Naperville, Water Reclamation Manager.
Ryan?
Ryan Anderson, Superintendent of Public Works, Manuka. I'm on the board as well for the Lower DuPage.
Andy?
Hello, Andy Hawkins, Forest Preserve District of Will County.
Nick?
Morning, Nick Gornick, City of Joliet, Plant Operations Superintendent, and also on the board of the Lower DuPage Work Group.
Dana?
Good morning. Dana Ledwig with Robinson Engineering here to listen on behalf of a handful of communities and helping them with their MS4 compliance efforts.
Great. Eric? All right, we'll come back to Eric. Don?
Don Kinsler, I'm the engineering project manager with the Village of Shanahan.
Espy? All right, we'll come back to Espy. I know she's her husband landowners along Mink Creek. Oh, she said she doesn't have a mic. No problem. Ken?
Ken Carroll, City Crest Hill.
Great. And Ben? And yeah, Ben's with Bolingbrook. Tim, did you get your mic figured out? No problem. Tim's with Strand. He's still working on some mic issues, no problem. Also representing a number of communities within the Lower DuPage area. And then I think Leah, you're the last one on my list here.
Yeah, Leah Rodberry with the Conservation Foundation.
Okay, awesome. All right, come back to sharing. All right. Keep track of my three screens and everybody here. All right, so just a quick overview of the agenda and reminder that the meeting's being recorded so that we can post it up to the website after the meeting. So our first order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from September 16th. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes? All right, I will launch the poll.
Do you need a motion, Jen? Because I can make one.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's fine. I can make the motion.
I'll second.
Dina. And I'm sorry, was there somebody else?
I think it was Scott.
Scott, okay.
It can be Scott or there was somebody else. It doesn't
Okay.
matter.
I just saw Scott like raised his hand.
I
so.
raised Anyway,
Thank you for that, Dina.
try to move the ball up the field.
No problem. Okay. Let's see, I think we got everybody answered. Thank you very much. The minutes are approved. Those will also be posted to the website. And yeah, if you ever need to go back and look at any of our meeting presentations or the meeting minutes and things like that, they're all posted on the website under the lower DuPage section. All right, let's see, keep moving. There we go. All right. So I wanted to just give kind of a little bit of a wrap up for the Hamel Woods project. So the dam removal was completed in September and into the kind of later, or I guess end of September, early October, that everything got wrapped up. We're still waiting on a final invoice or an invoice from the Forest Preserve District. They're putting together all of the documentation and things that we need so that we can reimburse them for those project costs. I'm going to try something new today and actually try and share a video. So it's a little different sharing, but I tested it out. It seemed to work. I'm not going to play the whole video, but I like to play at least the beginning couple of minutes of the video that the Forest Preserve District put together. And then there's a link at the bottom. You can find it on their YouTube channel or on their Facebook pages. Hopefully this works.
This summer's removal of the Hamel Woods Dam sure did generate a lot of interest from the public. And we are happy to say that this project was executed swiftly and safely with a positive impact on the DuPage River for years to come, not only here in Hamel Woods, but throughout Will County. While removal happened in just a matter of weeks, planning for this project took years in coordination with other organizations, such as the Lower DuPage River Watershed Coalition and the Conservation Foundation. Funding was made possible with a grant from the Lower DuPage River Watershed Coalition. The coalition is made up of municipalities and park districts along the DuPage River in Will County.
So I work for the Conservation Foundation and I provide staffing to the Lower DuPage River Watershed Coalition as a partnership that we have between our two organizations because we can do more together than we can do individually. This project has been really a keystone project for the coalition to remove this dam and increase access and movement of fish up into the upper parts of the watershed, helping to improve our water quality and health of our aquatic ecosystems.
The dam was constructed in the 1930s by the Civilian Conservation Corps, which was a work program funded by the federal government. They constructed the dam originally to create a pool of water for recreational uses, and those would have included both fishing as well as swimming and other activities that were in the water.
Back in the early 2000s, the Conservation Foundation had received grant funding through the Illinois Department of Natural Resources Conservation 2000 program to really look at what the impacts of dams were in the DuPage River system. So we looked at dams along the main stem of the DuPage and up into the east and west branches of the DuPage River and identified a number of dams that really served no purpose any longer. And so through that study, we identified a number of dams, including this one here, that really, like I said, pose no additional benefit as far as flood control or stormwater management or anything like that, and really could be slated for removal to improve the health of our streams.
Based on the studies that they had done, we're able to show that the ecology of the river was different downstream than it was upstream of the dam. That was confirmation for what a lot of people suspected, and that was that the dam created an impediment to the free flow of fish and other species in the river. So it's not often that we get to do restoration in a stream or in a river. We do that, of course, at times. So most of our restoration work is terrestrial or land-based. It's a little bit different, quite a bit different than some of our other, what I would say run-of-the-mill or standard projects that we do that sometimes require only 1 or maybe 2 permits, and they're local permits rather than federal and state permits.
While some people objected to the removal of the dam because they had personal connections to it, now there are different opportunities for visitors to create new memories in this spot.
Part of our human nature is to be a little resistant to change, but this change reflects what we've learned about the river, and that these types of structures are really bad for the health of the river. It creates this wall, and so although this is something different, it is something new to embrace because we are going to continue to see really great things from this project.
So with this project, unlike a lot of other ones, is that the contractor is basically under the gun as soon as they get in river, right? So as soon as we got mobilized and the cofferdam systems were put in place, the contractor needs to go as fast as they physically can and still do, a quality job while they're doing it, so that they can get out of the river before, potential heavy rains happen and either take existing equipment with it or just mess up the whole entire program and set you back weeks, if not months, in the process. As soon as material and everything gets out on site, tree clearing happens, and then the next thing that happened with the project was the cofferdam system, which was established by a company called Dam that's out of the Northeast. They're a subcontractor in the project. They got in river, and they would set up their structure, if you will, as a steel frame, and bolt that into the bedrock. And as soon as everything was secure, we did it on a half river system, right? So we isolated half of the river during phase 1, and phase 2 is the second half. But as soon as the structure was up, they would peel over a vinyl tarp and put down sandbags to seal the river's edge portion of that. Pump the water out. As soon as the water's to a level that we can get equipment in there, that's when the heavy equipment would come in and either jackhammer out or excavate out the existing material in the dam.
The removal of this dam along the DuPage River is really important because it's going to allow fish passage all the way up into the upper reaches of the east and west branch of the DuPage River, especially as the watershed groups up there have actually already removed dams. And so this will be really a way to get that extension all the way up into the DuPage County portions of this watershed. So in addition to just the dam removal itself, you'll notice that there are a number of large boulders and stones put in place in the river. That's to help create better habitat for fish and macroinvertebrates in the stream. Most dams were built on spots of the river that already had a riffle, so likely there was a riffle in this spot, and that just adds to the diversity of habitat in the stream, allowing for more places for fish and macroinvertebrates, the bugs in the stream, to find habitat and expand their populations. So that riffle is an important component of the restoration part of this project.
While the removal of the dam and the attached overlook are the changes you'll immediately see while visiting, the shoreline will evolve over time.
So when people come back in the spring, everything's going to be a little bit taller, but with everything that was seeded, it's a woodland seeding mix, so it's going to be taller grasses. And this is actually part of our viewshed management program as well. So the idea with this is to be able to see the river from the parking lot, have a direct connection when you come here. So there'll just be some tall grasslands that get in there. It'll take a couple years to establish, with trees that have a canopy over the top of them. And you'll be able to sit on the river's edge, throw your kayak in the water, and paddle around.
In the long term, we'll start seeing more animal diversity and overall improved river ecosystems. These partner organizations have already seen results based on previous dam removals up north.
We pretty much started to see immediate increases in fish as they moved up well beyond even what we expected. fish moving up into species of fish that were only found kind of between this dam and the dam up in the Warrenville area. There are a few dams up there. Really only seeing those fish here in between those dams. Once they removed those dams upstream, they started immediately seeing fish moving upstream on the East Branch at Churchill Woods, fish movement within that same season and then into the years after it. So we really do expect to see movement of fish really rather quickly.
Even though, you know, there's a lot of initiatives and a lot of studies to get something like this done, you have to have the will to do it and the longevity to permit it as well as to pay for it.
You're on mute.
Yeah, I just realized that. Thank you. Hopefully that came through well for everyone. This is the first time I've actually done the video through Zoom. And I think the Forest Preserve District did a great job of documenting really the entire process of the restoration project, all the before drone footage and the pictures and video as they were assembling the porta-dam system and the removal. So between this video and a number of some other great pictures that are up on their website, definitely, I think does a whole lot because of what happened right at that spot. Obviously, it's very visible, but to have some of that background information for the public to understand why we do these projects and the importance of them, I think is really important. I think the Forest Preserve District did a really nice job with that. So again, search up the YouTube channel for the Forest Preserve District or find it on the Facebook page. I think we also have links to this on our Lower DuPage website. So definitely something to share. All right, so we're gonna, now that project's basically wrapped up, and we'll be including all of these materials in the annual report that goes to IEPA for the special conditions in our wastewater permits. So that will go in next spring. This project completion will all be included in that, but now we'll be kind of jumping to our next project. So there was a second project that was identified in the wastewater permits that have the special condition, which is actually all of our wastewater permits in the watershed have this condition to complete the second project. So that's what we're going to kind of get started talking about today. So we've talked about trying to identify, location for the project, and initially it had been identified to address there's sort of a 14-mile stretch of very similar habitat through the DuPage River that runs from kind of upstream of where the Hamel Woods Dam was up into kind of the area south of like 119th Street. So just south of Naperville, sort of the very north end of Plainfield area. And so looking at the various segments of stream and trying to find somewhere that had public ownership, ideal on both sides of the river for a long enough stretch to be able to implement a project that would, be a large enough project to increase fish and macroinvertebrate scores. And there is a fair amount of public ownership along the river, but it tends to be on one side or the other. And so that posed some challenges in locating a good project site. And so what we've come up with is the site in, I guess it'd be the downtown area basically of Plainfield, south of 126 Lockport Street. And so we have public ownership completely on the west side, all the way down to almost Renwick Road. And then we have public ownership on the east side for a portion of it, kind of up in this, up in this north part up to somewhere about in here. And then it's couple of landowners in here. I think we have about 8 individual landowners that we'll be reaching out to, but all of the land along here is all floodplain. And so to be, at the very least, to be able to get construction access easements along those properties, but the potential of also doing some shoreline restoration and maybe expanding into the riparian area will definitely be part of the discussions with those landowners. But yeah, basically this was kind of the longest section. I think from 126 down to Renwick Road is about a mile. I think we have 0.6 miles up to this point, up to the pedestrian bridge here. Obviously this side, because the road runs right along here, there's really not much in the way of opportunity along this side in this section here, but the village does own all of this. So kind of based on what is written into the permits, some of the project objectives, I mean, first and foremost is to improve our fish and bug scores within this section. Our bug scores are just into the sort of good category, so just into fully supporting for macroinvertebrates, but we'd like to raise those scores to give us a little bit of buffer, as you know, the biology does have some level of fluctuation through time, and so to be able to bolster those scores to make sure that we stay in that good category, and then looking at improving our fish scores, and that will mostly be done through really improvement of in-stream habitat. So looking at how do we diversify flow. Like I mentioned, the vast majority of this middle section of the river is somewhat shallow, very uniform flow across the whole river, kind of wide. And so how do we maybe narrow that in, within the channel itself, within those sort of normal flow conditions. And that might be, using rock in various ways, but looking at narrowing and diversifying flow so that we can create different habitat structure. Improving the substrate, it's a fairly uniform gravelly substrate, and then looking at if there is enough drop, basically enough slope in that segment of the river to increase some pool river run type sequences. Look at some stream bank stabilization, kind of addressing some of the component of reducing sediment and nutrients coming into the segment. And then also looking at what we might be able to do within the sort of that riparian area along the banks of the river. So not just at the banks, but up into that riparian floodplain area. And so this section of the river is a part of the Plainfield Riverfront master plan that they just completed earlier this year. So we'll definitely be working with the village and the items that they have in their plan to see where our goals overlap, and then look at how we might be able to address any areas where there may be some contradictions in use, and see if we can't come up with something that provides benefits, definitely addressing our objectives, and then figuring out where we might be able to work with the village and make sure that the things that we're doing don't necessarily impact the goals and objectives that they have. With all of the data collection that we've done, over the last nearly, almost 10 years. So we just completed our third round of sampling. Using that data, that always had been the intent, is using that data to help guide kind of where we work and then what we might do. And so looking at, like the specifics of habitat, since habitat is, the work that we're going to be doing using the data that's been collected on habitat within this reach to help guide the work that we're doing. So LDO9 up here represents the station. So it's based at Renwick Road and upstream from there. So pretty much covering a good portion of the segment upstream that we're looking at. So we really want to have more black squares and less yellow dots, basically. So these are attributes of good quality habitat. And then these are the things that basically detract from the quality of that habitat. So, recovering from channelization, we can't really, I don't think we have the ability to move the stream at all, but looking at what we can do within the stream to kind of address some of the challenges posed by channelization, looking at improving those substrates, increasing the development of riffles and pools. Sinuosity, again, very challenging in the kind of straight nature of the overall stream channel, but what can we do maybe within that stream channel to increase some of that sinuosity? Looking at increasing places where basically it says that there's no fast current type. So looking at how do we diversify flow? And this again gets to sort of substrate embeddedness is the kind of fine materials that are filling up all the gaps between the rocks in the riffles. And so how do we look at maybe addressing that? And then, like I said, increasing. So by addressing some of these issues, we'd be able to increase some of these black boxes over here. And then that also gets to, I didn't put the table in, but we have a table looking at data from the fish, the IBI scores that we have. And so the index of biotic integrity for fish looks at, I think it's like 12 different components of the fish community. So it's not just the total number of species or total number of fish, but the different types of fish. And that also gives us information about what kind of groups of fish are we missing. And we're missing fish that spawn in gravel beds or utilize the more rocky substrate. And so as we increase that type of habitat, we expect to be able to get some of those species of fish that prefer that type of habitat that we know we have in the river system. They're just not hanging around in this stretch of the river. And so by increasing those components of habitat and getting at those increased fish and macroinvertebrate scores. And we have that same sort of data for the macroinvertebrates as well, as far as if we improve, what habitats are we lacking that would help us improve those bug scores. So all that data will be used as we go through the design process. So in the meeting notice that I sent out last week, I included information about the statement of interest that we have posted on our website. We posted in the newspaper. Basically, because our funds are coming from public sources, we're trying to follow the same sort of process for bidding parts of the project as our municipal partners utilize. So we did post it in the newspaper, have it posted to the website, put it out in our meeting announcement that goes out to everybody. And then Dina also shared it with a list of consultants the DRSCW has put together over the years that work on these types of projects. So we think we got a pretty fair net cast as far as getting it out to the people who do this type of work. So we do have all of the details. I've really kind of just made a very short list of the various tasks that are involved here, but more details right on the homepage of the website. You can click for the full SOI if you're interested. But looking at kind of getting that background information, the topo survey done, with the what our wetland issues are, looking at some of the flow, things like that, and then using that data and all of the data that we've collected through the years and any information that the village has and information from their master plan, and look at developing those design alternatives to meet our objectives. And then going through that process with input from our project team, so that we can get to a point of really determining exactly what we can accomplish with the project, and then taking that kind of those designs and getting them through kind of final engineering, and prepared for doing submitting for our permit. So we'll have permits with the Corps and the DNR, I assume the county. So preparing whatever permits are necessary, completing any modeling that's necessary for those permits, preparing cost estimates and bid documents, and coordinating again with those project partners. So the end goal of this contract will be to have basically all the bid documents, at least the permit submitted and hopefully in hand, and bid documents that we'd be able to hand over to the village to go out and bid the project for construction. So that is, oops, down, wrong way. Those are due November 24th, so next Wednesday at the end of the day, or 5 o'clock. And then we'll be looking at putting together a project committee, which I'll find another name for. I know several of our members are also on the projects committee for DRCW, so don't want to confuse things too much. But if you're interested in participating, please reach out to me. Basically, we're looking to put together a small committee of folks who can help guide really the whole project. So we will have a few staff from the Village of Plainfield and the Plainfield Park District as the other public landowner. And then we would like members of the coalition to also participate to review the statements of interest that we get in, which we'll want to do that really that first week or so after Thanksgiving, because we'd like to be able to let the shortlisted firms know by December 8th that we would like to get a full proposal from them. Those proposals, we do it by the end of the year, and then we'll review those proposals and set up interviews to be able to do a final selection by the end of January, so we can get basically probably at our January meeting, although we won't necessarily have a consultant chosen by that meeting, because I think our meeting is January 20th. So we may be close, but basically definitely coming back to the group for permission to negotiate a contract at that point. But yeah, so if you're interested in participating, please reach out to me. It will, we will be fairly fast paced here at the beginning, and then we'll have more regular kind of spread out meetings as we go through the design process over the next year or so as we get this project to the point of submitting permits and getting to that final design and engineering. So please do let me know if you're interested. I think that's it. So if does anybody have any questions, please just unmute and feel free to ask questions, or if you have questions afterwards, you can always email me or give me a call as well. I think we have identified in the SOI, so we're looking at something under $250,000 for this first phase. It represents about maybe about 10% about what the total project cost might be. So it really is an estimate based on projects the DRCW has run. So that falls within our, and overall our, not necessarily the budget for the project, but the funds that we have remaining for our special conditions project funds are right about $2.7 million. So I think we should definitely be able to accomplish this project and potentially have some funds to extend into another project. All right, I'm going to turn things over to Dina, and she's going to provide an update on kind of where things are with the NIP/NARP components.
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of quickly go over where we are and what we're working on in terms of two of the components of the NIP, the Qual 2 KW modeling, as well as on the non-point source feasibility analysis. I feel like I'm missing a word in there, but so Tetra Tech was here quite a bit ago, kind of talking about the Qual 2 KW models, and we've been making progress on those. So I just wanted to give you a refresher on sort of what Tetra Tech covered and then where we're going and how we're going to be utilizing these models. So the lower DuPage model is been based on the data that was collected as part of the 2018 bioassessment. So the year that we're doing our calibration for is January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2018. What we're considering the lower DuPage model starts at the confluence of the east and west branches of the DuPage River in Naperville, and then it goes down just and ends at the Shanahan Dam. So there is a little section of lower DuPage below there that is not included in the model, but it was just easier to sort of make that break at the Shanahan Dam. As the first part of the model set up, we have to sort of break that long segment of stream into workable sections. So that's what we consider our segmentation. For this model, we have 21 segments. You can see them on the map on the right over there, going all the way down. They range in sections from 0.1 miles. That was the actual Hamel Woods Dam. You have to remember in 2018, the Hamel Woods Dam was still there and still was part of this original model, to the longest segment being 4.18 miles. And these segments were broken up based on major tributaries, wastewater treatment plants, possibly land use changes, things like that. And so how the model works is that each segment is sort of run as a group. So when you're looking up here at model 1, everything that's located on this segment sort of has the same model run, down to 2 to 3, and then they all get added together, to make the longitudinal plots of the thing. So we can technically look at the DO conditions and the nutrients and the algae conditions along each one of these segments for that year. So that's sort of how the base model is set up, and kind of gives us a bunch of little things to work with. And then we have the overall model. Next slide, Jennifer. So what we've been working on, the main first step of the model development is obviously the calibration. So you have the model set up where we got the segmentations. They took all of our data from our bioassessment data to our continuous DO data, any other data that the IEPA may have had in terms of water chemistry. We looked at flow, weather, all sorts of things like that all serve as inputs to the model. And then you have to set up a bunch of different calibration runs to determine how well our model, the model setup, parameters are matching the data that we are actually seeing in the field. And so can't remember if Tetra Tech had the completed calibration models for you. They may have had some draft ones when we met, but because we were in order, as you guys know, the East Branch and the West Branch models make up your headwaters. So those models had to be completely completed and calibrated in order to do the final calibrations down here on the lower. So these next couple of slides have a couple of the calibration runs for segment 9. It just happens to be that I picked segment 9, which is where our project's going to be. So it's all sort of the same segment that Jennifer was looking at, Lockport Street, which I believe is also known as 126. Down to Mather Woods, which is the park that's down there at Renwick Road. So this is that segment that we're looking at, including in on that project that Jennifer just talked about. So on the left, you can see here's the water temperature graph. So we have water temperature graphs, from our continuous DO sondes from that period, in the summer, and you can see we do a really good job with matching that. On the left, on the right, sorry. We have nitrogen. So you have the orange dots being the nitrogen species, and then the reds are the ammonia species. Obviously, ammonia is doing fairly well. It's very low there. And we're doing a pretty good job catching most of the nitrogen. There's obviously some outliers, and things that might be going on. These are grab samples that were collected that correspond, on those specific dates as part of the bioassessment. Next slide. Similar calibration data is for phosphorus on the left, and then on the DO from the continuous DO sondes over there on the right. Once again, phosphorus, we're doing a pretty good job representing the conditions. There's a couple points that don't fall exactly on those lines, but they're very close. And, according to the modelers over at Tetra Tech, they're very confident that that works very well. You can see there's some little bit of issues over there with the DO. The trailing off of the DO is likely a failure of the data and not actually, we didn't probably have DO dissolved oxygen of 0 in lower DuPage on that reach. That's just some data. There's probably something wrong with that sonde. We probably need to QA that out. But you can see the model is representing a good picture of the diurnal sondes, the diurnal swings, but we're having some issues with the supersaturation conditions during the day. And likely that's attributed to us just not getting, this is helping us show that we probably have a very plant or algae based dominated system that maybe the model is not quite representing. But when we look at all the calibration graphs for all the different reaches that we were able to do this with using those geosons, you know, when we would change things to improve one, we would lose that calibration in others, and kind of have, and so we've sort of had to look at that. And the modelers do feel that even though there are the supersaturation points might not be, we might be underrepresenting those in the model, we are capturing the overall DO characteristics through the year with how the model is set up and is calibrated right now. And we can ask Tetra Tech more questions and bring them back if you guys want to get into the details on that, but I'm going to go ahead and default and trust them that they are very confident that the model is doing a good job predicting the DO conditions. Next slide. And this is phytoplankton. We don't have very much phytoplankton data, as you can see. So a lot of this the phytoplankton is something that has been added to the bioassessments moving forward that we did not have a good number of data. These observed phytoplankton were not even collected by us. They were likely collected with some of the EPA data collected out there as part of their ambient monitoring program. So we'll be able to get a better picture on that phytoplankton. It's been a recommendation from both the modelers over at Tetra Tech that additional chlorophyll A data to represent and needs to be collected in the watershed, both the benthic as well as the cetonic. And it's something we're also hearing from our friends over at the Midwest Biodiversity Institute, MBI, who help us with their IPS models in order to help better calibrate all that. So it's definitely something that we on staff has been working on. It's been added to the bioassessment programs where we can, and we're going to see that continuing and to be able to collect that data set to go ahead and, you know, further calibrate these models moving forward with that additional benthic and cystonic data. You know, we did do all that as part of the expanded DO program this year, where we did collect cystonic data at all of the sites, correct, Jennifer?
Yes, every time we collected nutrient samples, we did a cystonic sample.
Chlorophyll A, which is what we're doing also up in the DRCW worked it. And then we had 7 sites, 6 main stem, 1 tributary site where we got some benthic chlorophyll A data. So that will also be used if we decide to move forward with recalibration or re-looking at these models moving forward. Next slide. So where are we going with this? So now that we have a calibrated model that the modelers feel are very representative and are very good to be using as type of the planning tools that we are planning on using them for, they're very confident that we're going to get a good picture. We need to start running scenarios. And what scenarios are, it means we change things. We go into the model and we change 1 or 2 parameters, maybe phosphorus concentration. We can change shade. We can change inputs from the POTWs, things like that. And then we find out what happens to the dissolved oxygen, as well as some of those parameters in the stream. And what we're really looking at here are the scenarios. So the contract had us running 5 scenarios per watershed, as well as an additional very reasonably cost if we wanted to add some more. So because we only had the complex of data and we couldn't wait for this 2021 data to be processed in order to get to stay on schedule with this project, we had to use that 2018 data. The first model run is going to be the removal of a Hamel Woods dam. So there, the model is going to go in and it's going to use this new stream geometry and the design plans that Jennifer and WBK have provided to go ahead and simulate what that looks like now that we no longer have that small impoundment and we no longer have that dam in place, and then run that model again. And then for the lower DuPage, that's going to become our base model, right? So we're going to run every other scenario that we're going to run on that model with the Hamel Woods Dam removed. So we're not going to go back to the original 2018 model we just looked at. It'll be this removal of the dam. The same thing we're going to be doing over in the DRCW watersheds over on Salt Creek with the removal of the Floresburg Woods Dam. That's going to set our new base model. And then every scenario run after that will then be run on the dam, run on the stream as it is today in 2021. So at our original discussions on this, and when we had some special meetings with our special condition permit holders, we wanted to look at, if you remember way back when Stephen was here, he talked about the watershed threshold or the watershed specific standard the MBI developed through the IPS model for phosphorus in the stream. And so this level was based on our IPS analysis, the identification of prioritization system model, lots of words, that looked at what would be the phosphorus conditions in-stream, so the in-stream phosphorus concentration that would allow, that we believe would help us get to moving the macroinvertebrates in the fish populations to the good range, you know, help and to the good range of this assessment scale, and, you know, have us meet that water quality goal, right? So, and that concentration was 0.28 milligrams per liter of total phosphorus. And that's the goal for the in-stream concentration. So we talked to our wastewater treatment plants about that, because as part of the NIP and slash NARP, we have to develop a watershed target for phosphorus. So what is our effluent, what not only is what our watershed target in stream, but what would be our goal for our wastewater treatment plants? In the lower DuPage, we have several plants that are currently discharging at 1 milligram per liter, and others that are discharging at, don't have a limit, so they're discharging somewhere between 2 and 4 milligrams per liter, depending on the time of the year and the plant. What would we need to do at those plants to bring that level down to get to meet that benchmark target with the in-stream water quality goal? And we talked to our plants, and they were very comfortable with us moving forward, doing some analysis on what that 0.28 number would mean for the plants. We know that when you get an effluent limit in your permit, you treat below that limit. So that's sort of where these two numbers come from. The 0.28 milligrams per liter is an in-stream goal. So that would represent approximately like 0.3435 limit in a permit for a plant, knowing that they would treat below that limit to ensure compliance and be putting out 0.28 milligrams per liter of total phosphorus. And the third scenario is very similar. It's the same concept, looking at an actual limit in the permits of 0.28, knowing that most of the time the plants would be treating below that limit to approximately 0.22 to have that margin of safety that they'll stay in compliance with the number that's in their permit. So we're in the process of running those. Once again, the lower DuPage is always a little bit behind the other runs because your headwater streams are the East Branch and the West Branch. So we have to run this scenario in the East Branch and West Branch, you know, to get the new models, because if the lower DuPage accepts an effluent limit of 0.28 or 0.35 milligrams per liter in the permits, the upper plants are also going to have that same limit. So the phosphorus coming into the lower DuPage will be lower, which will change how the headwater inputs. And so we have to keep building. Every change that's made in the upstream would be reflected in the lower. So there's a lot of, you know, steps that need to be done. So we run these scenarios. We have those completed. We have the completed data for the East Branch. That was the first model that we have completed. And we do see more compliance with the dissolved oxygen standard, as well as with these limits, the 0.28, especially with the 0.28 and the 0.22, we are able to meet our in-stream goal of that 0.28 milligrams per liter for phosphorus. So if we were to accept these limits, we are seeing that. So now we're kind of cross-checking that through the other watersheds. And I'm expecting that memo any day now from the consultants. I just got an email today that they hope to get it to me by Monday of next week. And what we've done is we have a projects committee scheduled for November 30th, where we're going to dive deep into all of these runs. So the scenario runs for all 4 watersheds will be completed at you know, for these effluent limits. So we can discuss where we're going to move forward, because now we can start looking at other options. So like, say we do go to the phosphorus, the lower phosphorus limit, and we want to increase shading, or we want to increase other things, what happens on that DO? And so we're going to start talking about what other scenarios that we want to start running in these models to simulate. So before I move on to the next subject, because the next subject is not related to this at all, I thought if there was any questions that I might be able to try to answer.
Dina, did you mention a time on the 30th, or do you know when that?
Oh yeah, it's already been scheduled. I sent the email out to the projects committee meeting. Let me open my calendar real fast because I don't remember. It is at 10 a.m. and I can forward you the link, the Zoom link, Doug, if you would like me to.
Well, with the advertisement, I would say if you could send that out, that'd be great if anyone's interested.
Yep, Jennifer has all that info. So if you want to send it to I don't know how you would like to get that out to your group, Jennifer. So
yeah, I can. Yeah, anybody who's interested, if you want to let me know, I can forward you the links
Yep, I just forwarded it directly to Doug. You can also, like, if you want to use the chat function too and just throw your name in there, I likely have your contact and I can just forward you the Outlook invite that I have set up. So you can use the chat function to do that. If that's easier since we're all here than sending separate emails.
Yep.
Okay.
And then, so Dina, like, as we get into, looking at the designs for like the project, we'd be able to incorporate what we're looking to do and see how that may be one of our additional design runs or model runs.
Yeah, if that's something that we are interested in really doing, yeah, definitely. I mean, that would definitely have a local impact. We'd be able to definitely look at the local impact on those reaches. Like I said, we had that reach, that's pretty much the project area. So we'd be able to look at maybe the impacts of geo on that reach and maybe the reach below it. Obviously the one thing that we've learned, that I've been learning, we've been learning, and as we're not the only ones using Qual 2 KW models. The Fox River Study Group has a model for the entire length of the Illinois portion of the Fox. Is that when you make these changes, they are very much localized, and so we wouldn't expect to see improved DO conditions, down near Shorewood for a project that we did in Plainfield. It would happen like very local. So we could, run some piecemeal on things like that if we see the benefit in doing that. But yeah.
Right. And potentially,
you'd be looking at changing very specific things. Yeah.
But potentially, this project could set the stage for other similar projects since we have such a similar condition through such a long stretch of the river.
Yes.
We'd be able to kind of look at, if we make these types of changes here,
yes.
If we made them somewhere else, we're probably going to have a similar local improvement.
Yes. And, it takes a lot to see a change, just, the sensitivity and some of these parameters, expect, like when you're looking at shading, you're going to be we're going to have to figure out how to get shading across the entire stream, which is very difficult, things like that. So, we'll have to talk about what that project design is looking at and whether it would be worth running into a run, because the changes may be so significantly small within the model that it may look exactly the same, right? So we just got to, just based on this, how the sensitivity of these models are set up.
Okay. All right, then jumping into the next part.
Okay, so the next part is the non-point source feasibility analysis. And hopefully you are all familiar that this is a permit condition that we have that's actually due by December 31st, 2021. So we haven't forgotten about it.
2023. Oh, I'm sorry. The report is
the NIP is 2023.
Yeah,
this report specifically, if it is in your, I don't know if it is in your permits, it is in my permits, that calls out this new date of December 31st, 2021. So it has a very broad title, non-point source feasibility analysis. Exactly what the intent of that was. It could be anything from a watershed planning type model to a loading analysis, to a stormwater analysis, very large. But what the permit does say, at least in the DRSCW permits, is it has a short-term objective and a long-term objective. And the short-term objectives are to assess non-point source reductions from leaf litter collection and street sweeping. So that's what we've been really focused on. And then our long-term goal for non-point source is awesome. It's to reduce non-point source contributions to the lowest practical extent. Somebody can help me define that at a later date, but right now I'm focused on meeting that short-term objective because I got some time to meet that long-term objective. So we've been working with Baxter Woodman as well as Tetra Tech to help us with this plan and with this report. And like I said, it is due at the end of this year, and we are going to easily be able to meet that deadline. Next slide. So what we're looking at is sort of a 4-phased approach with this project. Is we had the questionnaire, and I want to thank all of you guys who have answered the questionnaire that went out earlier this year that was focused on gathering information on your leaf litter practices, as well as your street sweeping practices, as well as a couple other hidden questions that we had in there that were helping us on other things but sort of fit this survey instead of sending out 4 little surveys. We went all in. Between the 2 watershed groups, we had over 40 people complete the questionnaires. And then some of the other reconnaissance we've been able to do on our own. So if you did some municipalities may not have completed a questionnaire, but we were able to use their websites and try to get some of the basic information. And so that questionnaire was focused on basic questions about your street sweeping program. How often do you sweep? how many curb miles you have in your district that you sweep, in your municipality that you sweep. Do you sweep different types of land use, residential versus industrial versus commercial differently, as well as your leaf litter practices? How often do you pick up leaf litters? When do you pick up leaf litter? Do you require your residents to bag them? Do you put it in the street? You know, all those types of questions. So to give us our background to find out what we are doing now within those watersheds. We've also been working with Baxter Woodman, sort of what we're kind of saw in our literature review, sort of looking at why we are interested in leaf litter. And I mean, I think we've talked a lot about it. And I think, has this group had a presentation from Selbrig on the importance of dissolved phosphorus in leaf litter? But there's been a lot of work being done, helped partially funded by the DRCW with the USGS in Wisconsin, that has shown that leaf litter is one of the is likely the primary source of dissolved phosphorus in urban stormwater. So not wastewater, but in urban stormwater, a large part of that dissolved phosphorus is attributed to leaf litter being caught on the streets, being put in the storm system, and then getting into our rivers and watershed, rivers and streams. So we also wanted to see what other people have been doing. Have there been other research besides Selbrig? So we've been looking at literature review, not only about the amount of phosphorus that's collected, you know, through street sweeping and leaf litter, but also the potential, how much potential sources of potential that there is in those sources to reduce phosphorus into our rivers and streams. And also looking at comparing some of how much we could potentially remove from street sweeping and leaf litter compared to other traditional BMPs that you think about for non-point source pollution. Things such as, you know, rain gardens, bioswales, and things like that. Sort of doing a compare and contrast to sort of help show why we are so focused on these two processes. So that's been ongoing as well. And then all that data that's collected in the survey is getting inputted into a Minnesota street sweeping phosphorus crediting tool. And so the Pollution Control Agency in Minnesota has a very strict MS4 program that does require the municipalities that are showing phosphorus impairments in their streams to set reduction targets, like actual numeric goals, and then implement practices to help them get to that goal. So say a city currently produces, I'm just making, you know, really broad numbers, 10 pounds of phosphorus per year. It's, that's orders of magnitude wrong, but through their storm sewer system, they would actually set a goal that they're going to reduce that by 20%, and they have to show how they're meeting those goals. So we may not actually see it in the stream quantity, but there have these like online tools and these spreadsheets that help show what practices they're doing to reduce phosphorus. So we're inputting all of our data into this Minnesota street sweeping phosphorus crediting tool, as well as making certain tweaks to it to help us calculate credits for here in Northeastern Illinois. And that will give us how much phosphorus is currently being removed from our system through the existing street sweeping practices that our municipalities are doing, and possibly identify spots that maybe could be targeted to change their practices, maybe increase street sweeping practices in order to make those numbers bigger. We're not looking to like make a BMP manual, but like trying to identify maybe spots where additional street sweeping may be helpful in reducing phosphorus. And we're also looking at how much phosphorus is being removed for the leaf litter that's collected. We know that we have great leaf litter collection processes. We want to show how much we're already removing through those practices. And then all these things will sort of make up the report. And then we'll have an additional section on additional work and studies that we would like to do. There's some limiting things that we have is like, we obviously don't know, we obviously don't have local data on how much phosphorus is in our leaf litter. So it depends on the types of trees, how long they're sitting there, things like that. We'd want to collect some actual samples, and kind of do some pilot studies on some different practices. So that'll be sort of our additional studies. But this is sort of how we've been approaching this project and what we've been focusing on with Baxter Woodman, with some advisement from Tetra Tech, since Tetra Tech did develop the original tool for phosphorus crediting for Minnesota. So what is that going to look like for you guys? How might it be helpful for you? This is sort of an example of sort of some of what we're going to have is an ARC database that will be available to all of our members where they can look at some of these things. So it's not just going to be like a paper map. It is an active ArcGIS database where you can sort of look at things. So what you're looking at here is a graphic of downtown Naperville. It's just the one that Baxter Woodman pulled for our example. This tree cover, these little green trees that you sort of see around, that you can see that look like trees, are a survey of the actual tree canopy. The Moran Arboretum in a university in the Northeast, I can't remember exactly which one, had a grant to actually produce this type of canopy data for the entire like Chicagoland region. So this is our base database. It was great to have this. Not only is it the actual tree cover, but you can actually go in there and click and it will tell you what kind of tree it is. It's crazy how much data that they have with this. So what we have done is we have obviously put that up so we can identify our municipalities. We're calculating percent tree canopy, especially percent tree canopy that's over their roads, because that's where we're sort of interested in looking at this. So we'll be able to do that for the municipalities, and then each municipality could actually see where their tree canopy is. The colored lines that are the roads, they're obviously the roads, but the different colors represent the different land uses. So we use CMAP land use. So we know that it's because many of the municipalities do street sweep, residential streets at a different frequency than commercial, that as a different frequency than their industrial. So we had to use some land use. It's not 100% ground truthed, but we did use the CMAP land use. So that's what those different colors are. So the orange is the residential, and that red color is their commercial district. This is, downtown Naperville. Washington Street is sort of over on the edge, and then underneath the label, underneath the legend would be sort of where Centennial Beach is, if you know where Naperville is, to kind of lay that out. And so this is sort of giving us our sort of this, and then by knowing what the tree cover is and what the different trees are, we can estimate how much phosphorus from these leaves could potentially fall into the roads that is being swept up based on the frequencies that was reported in the surveys, and is being all inputted into that calculator to calculate out how much total phosphorus that we have. But we do have this graphic. This is just an example, but we do have all this data for all of our study area.
Cool. All right. If anybody have any questions for Dina, definitely reach back out to her as well. And I believe this will be also reported on.
Yeah. So the way this is going to work,
DRCW meeting.
Yeah. Well, so we don't know. There'll be a small cover at the DRCW meeting, but not really. So the way that this is going to work is we will have a draft report. Staff will have it by Friday. We hope to have a draft report that will go out to the projects committee either on December 3rd or December 6th, depending on how many comments staff has, that given Baxter Woodman a couple of days to incorporate them. And then we will have the projects committee will be able to review this report, all the way up till just to probably the 17th. And then it'll go back to Baxter Woodman for us to be able to get it in by December 31st. A lot of discussions will be done via email and things like that, just because of the timeline. Now, this is going to be a big component of the NIP. So we're not going to really focus a lot right now. This is sort of just the analysis section of this report. We have to do the analysis, but we're not going to play all of our cards right now in terms of what's going to be in the NIP. Those recommendations and those steps forward will really be developed over the next year to go into final NIP that's due 2023. But we had to do the study based on this shorter deadline. So this report, we focus mainly on our methods and then some of the summarizing results, but not diving deep into those recommendations that might impact the municipalities or have long-term, set goals or anything like that. That will all be done as part of the NIP development outside of this report.
Great. All right. Thank you, Dina. All right. Let's see. So moving forward, just some wrap ups with our winter de-icing workshops that we held in partnership with DRCW and Lower Des Plaines, as well as Lake County and the Upper Des Plaines Watershed group up there. Let's see who else. The Conservation Foundation and several of our county partners in supporting these workshops and coordinating outreach and getting the word out about them, kind of in a joint effort. So we had over 930 attendees overall across the 5 workshops, which I think may have been our largest number to date. So having the virtual option has definitely been beneficial in getting people participating in these workshops. the way we kind of set things up, we all worked together on getting sponsorships and then the funds coming in through registration to cover the cost of having Fortin Consulting do the workshops. We did end up in the black overall in the budget, and those funds are going to be split. I think it comes out to like 6 ways. So we'll actually be getting a little bit of income off of these as once all of the Nancy's working on exactly what those numbers are. A couple $100, but overall, I think that was a great process in being able to share the income, share the costs across these groups, and getting it out to a broader audience. So we are planning to continue to hold virtual trainings in 2022, and then looking at the potential of some smaller in-person trainings on more specific topics. And so more to come on that later. We did continue this year with doing our winter technical briefs. The first one actually that's listed on there, November 9th, ended up, we had to cancel that because it happened to be the morning that Comcast seemed to be just sort of shut down everywhere. So we have that one rescheduled for December 7th. This past Tuesday, we held one focused on brine. We will have the recording of that up on the website soon. It was a great presentation by Glenn back at Henderson on the various ways that brine is used, really kind of presented it in a very kind of real world practice and equipment and things like that. And then I'll be doing the third one next 2 weeks. So November 30th, first thing in the morning, really going over how to utilize outreach materials to communicate with your residents. So the idea with these winter briefs is they're relatively short, half-hour presentation, some time for some questions, and focused really on kind of a particular audience based on the topic. So the registration for the webinars is available at saltsmart.org. And I think I'm going to turn things over to Leah to just go over the things that we have available for our winter outreach materials.
Yeah, so hi everyone. Just a couple minutes on our new outreach materials for the winter. This is now our third year doing this, so we've accumulated some. So I'm going to be featuring the new materials, but we also have more from the past 2 years on our website. So the blogs, each season we do a few blog posts, and the topics this year are on anti-icing, as well as pets and salt, how chlorides affect mostly dogs. And the last one, my screen's frozen, but I think I remember it, is on, just general impacts of chlorides.
Let's see.
Oh, I just skipped over that. So anyway, our outreach materials are on our website, ldpwatersheds.org/outreach. And if you go to our website, you can find them at the footer of the website. So the very bottom, it'll pull up all our topics, and you'll find the Salt Smart one there circled. Okay, so back to what the content is. Yeah,
sorry,
just skipped in my mind. Yeah, so we have new blog posts in addition to what was there, focusing on anti-icing, how pets are affected by chlorides, and then also just more general impacts of chlorides, especially focusing on the environmental impacts.
Yeah, and the nice thing with the new website, we have these actually as the blog, so you can link right to the blogs, but then we also have them just as Word documents if you want to create your own.
Mm-hmm. And then there are graphics to go along with the blog. So on our Facebook page, we often will post them together. So might post this first one about anti-icing lines, and then also post that article about anti-icing. So that's one way to use them, or you could just drop them on their own into your Facebook post or a newsletter of some kind. And then this year we have 3 new posters or graphics, which are pretty exciting. So the first is kind of a what you could put up in a doorway of a school, a park district, a business, along with different tools to help people be salt smart, first by sweeping, shoveling, scraping off the snow or ice, and then turning to salt. So before you grab the salt, what's kind of this theme of it is, here are a few things you can do to be salt smart. And that's kind of the same general topic of this comic on the right side, but this is focused at homeowners. So this is just a fun comic trying different forms of communication. And so we have this Winter Helpers comic available as a PDF, like it's shown here, but then also individual panels. So that could be a fun thing to post on Facebook so people can click through the different panels. And then in the middle here, we have our Lose the Crunch, Love the Lines poster. So we're trying out this just new phrase and even a hashtag Love the Lines, just to spread awareness about what anti-icing is. And so when people see those anti-icing lines, they know we're doing some efficient protection instead of just throwing on a ton of salt. And then we have several videos linked on our website, a short PSA video, an hour-long kind of webinar covering like a really good overview of chlorides and Salt Smart, and then how to calibrate a walk behind salt spreader, a kind of a tutorial, and then also linking Romeoville's great video they did about how we can help plow drivers do their job faster so they can get to our streets faster.
And if anybody else, any other communities have put together any videos, we would love to post them up here and share them with others. So if you can send a link to Leah or I, we can get those posted up as well. We definitely would like to promote the work that everybody is doing.
Yeah, definitely. Any resources you have, we want to share, and we can also post those on our Facebook page too. And then we have physical resources. So we have our salt scatter cups and bookmarks. So we still have a good amount of those available, and we'll get those to you, or you can pick them up at our office.
And then I added one, Leah. So we've been, kind of looking for other ideas of, through a lot of the materials that we've been putting together, definitely focusing on safety, focusing on kind of putting a face to the program. The fact that, there are actual people who are driving those trucks, and that there's plans out there. This is a complicated program. And so, kind of, again, trying to go at this outreach from many different angles. And so a cool idea that we came across was some work that Iowa DOT did, and they've put together kind of these posts that they use on their social media. So information about their plow drivers and advice that they have. And so we really like this idea, but obviously if it's not something that our municipalities would use, then it's not worth spending time on it. But we'd really love to get some input back from communities, that if we were to put together kind of our own template for this, with our Salt Smart stuff on it, and then partnering with various communities, if this is something you guys would use. We could put together kind of a simple form to fill out as far as the information about different plow drivers that we could put up here, or fill into this, but then have a format, graphic format that would be based on our materials. And then we could work with communities to create these if this is something you think would be useful and something that you would use on your social media. So, if this is something you would be interested in, please reach out to Leah or I. And if there's interest out there, then we're definitely willing to put some time into coming up with kind of our own graphic for this. But it's something that if we don't actually have information to fill in from communities, then it isn't worth actually creating the graphic. So definitely reach out to us if this is something you guys are interested in. We're also really interested in, coming out and, videotaping portions of some of your operations so we get more material for our outreach materials for next year. We're always working on these things well in advance. So usually we have our winter materials done by the middle of October. So it's, we definitely need to be thinking about any kind of pictures or graphics or video for next year to be able to be getting those things during this winter season. So if anyone is interested in that, or we'll be reaching out specifically to some communities, but we would love to get out and videotape either portions of your operations, the way you store salt or wash your trucks, or all the kind of different BMPs that we look at from a good housekeeping side of things, as well as the snow plowing, snow clearing operations themselves. So we'll be continuing to reach out to folks if you have ideas or you're interested. Maybe you have ideas of things that you would like to do, but don't have the capabilities to actually do them. Reach out to us and we'd love to partner. And I think, yeah, the last part on outreach stuff is, Leah does post these materials up to our Facebook pages for the Lower DuPage River Watershed Coalition. So this is a great place for you to, share from our Facebook page. If that makes it easier for you to get these materials out on your own Facebook pages, or go to the website and download the individual materials and utilize them. These materials are definitely meant to be a way for you to meet your MS4 education and outreach and public involvement kind of component of your MS4 permits. So these materials are here, and if there are other things that you're looking for to help you meet those goals, please let us know. And I think that wraps things up. So if there's any questions or comments about anything, please unmute and feel free to ask. Otherwise, we're always available via email, questions, comments. If there's needs that you have, please let us know.
Jennifer, can you not stop? We can stop the recording, but don't close the meeting. I'm trying to answer something in the chat, so I don't want it to close out for me. So it's gonna give me a second to get the data.
Sure. No problem. So yeah, I can stop recording at this point.